Hey guys, thanks for stopping by. My name is Courtney and I'm the ME Lion. Today I'm going to be discussing my 7-month carnivore update and a few hard lessons learned along the way. I've got some laundry in. I apologize if you can hear that. And also I'm doing the best I can with lighting. We're just gonna, this is real life, so we're gonna keep going. Before starting carnivore, I had a whole laundry list of miserable, confusing, devastating, disabling mystery symptoms. I'm not going to go through all of those again. I've discussed them several times in my previous videos. If you're curious about all of them, I do have a video called So Many Symptoms, Is Carnivore Helping? It is a longer video, I'm sorry, but if you want to know the full list of things I talk about, every single one of them there. But I'm just going to go quickly through the improvements that I've experienced. So since beginning carnivore, I've seen a lot of improvements, and a lot of them came fairly quickly. Not all of them, but within the first couple of weeks I was seeing major relief in symptom reduction, the absence or reduction in things like pain and brain fog, better cognitive ability. All of that stuff came pretty quickly. What I still struggle with is energy, fighting against post-exertional malaise, and sleep is still a bit of an issue, and I'm still having some orthostatic challenges. And even with the things that I'm still struggling with, there are vast improvements. Even though I still struggle with energy relative to like normal people, if I compare myself to where I was before I started, I've actually come a really long way. I like to say that I've gotten a longer leash. If you visualize that in your mind, and I don't like dogs on leashes on these like poles that people have, but anyway, if you use that as your visual, before I started carnivore, it's like if the pole was here, I was right here. I had no room on my leash really at all. And as I've gone along my carnivore journey, my leash has gotten a little bit longer and a little bit longer, so I have a little bit more freedom. It doesn't mean that the MECFS is gone. It doesn't mean that I don't still have those limitations and challenges. I do. They're just different now. So when I do end up overdoing it and I end up with post-exertional malaise, it isn't as severe and it doesn't last as long. If you don't know what that is, I have discussed that in previous videos. I'm trying not to be so repetitive. When I don't explain things, I always get a lot of comments like, well, what is MECFS? What is post-exertional malaise? But I feel like I explain it to some degree in every single video. MECFS is myalgic encephalomyelitis, chronic fatigue syndrome. Post-exertional malaise is what most of us refer to as a crash. It's when we push past our ability and we end up literally like our bodies just kind of quit. We are bedbound or chair-bound until our bodies recover. And that can be a day or two, it can be weeks or months. A bad enough crash can actually change your baseline. So that's just a brief explanation on that. When I get into a crash now, the symptoms are not nearly as bad. Used to be that every single symptom I had would flare up, and now it's just kind of like I'm just dealing with a lot of fatigue. I have a little bit of depression on those days, and I do have brain fog creep back in when I'm in a crash. Otherwise, I don't deal with brain fog all that much anymore. The orthostatic challenges, yeah, I'm still dealing with that. So I have a lot of tachycardia when I'm upright, sitting upright or standing upright. I think that's probably improved. I don't know to what degree because I've just now really started tracking it. I'm wearing this armband that continuously tracks my heart rate. It also tracks my heart rate variability in the morning and sort of records my biometrics in this app that I can help monitor, you know, everything, and it helps with my pacing. So I'm still dealing with tachycardia. I think though, you know, before I started this and before I started tracking my heart rate, you know, I wouldn't be up for very long and I would feel sick and nauseous and lightheaded. Sometimes I'd get that tunnel vision, you know, when you're about to pass out. I'd feel like my whole body was shaking, you know, outside and inside. And I felt chest pains. I could feel palpitations. So I think my heart was probably really running away. Now, you know, when I go from like a lying position, if I'm lying in bed in the morning when I do my check-in, I'm usually around 75 beats per minute. As soon as I sit up, this isn't feet touching the bed, this is just, you know, pushing yourself up in the bed, my heart rate's getting into the 90s. When I stand up, after I've been on my feet for, let's say at least 2 minutes, my heart is rapidly climbing, getting into, you know, the teens, 117 is kind of where I seem to hang out if I'm, you know, just kind of standing upright for a shorter period of time. If I'm doing something like brushing my hair or brushing my teeth, I have gotten as high as 143 beats per minute, doing nothing other than, you know, so it's not like that's a real physical task. Apparently it is for me, but so those are still things that I'm coping with. But like I said, they're improved from what they were. Let's talk about some more improvements. My quality of life has so greatly improved. Before starting Carnivore, it isn't a stretch to say that pretty much every day of my life I wanted to die. There were times that, you know, I thought about taking my own life. And then as I tried to focus less on, you know, thinking about how sick I was and how miserable all those symptoms were. And it's hard, you know, because when you're in constant pain, and I had nerve pain, you know, I felt like bees were stinging me all over my body all the time. I felt like my muscles were on fire and my joints, you know, were killing me all the time. And that's a lot to deal with. You know, you just feel like your whole body has like turned on you, you know. You feel like someone out there has a voodoo doll with your face on it and you're just being tortured. And it's a really hard thing to deal with. It's a really hard thing to, you know, try to get your thoughts off of. When you're in a lot of pain and misery, that's where your focus goes to, whether it's deliberate or not, you know. So I had to make a conscious effort to try to find other things to focus on. And when I started focusing more on my spiritual life, the desire to take my own life, I won't say completely went away, but it was reduced greatly. You know, I finally felt like, okay, even though this is really miserable, I can find a way to cope with this. You know, there is hope, and but at the same time, I still wasn't opposed to dying. You know, I wasn't afraid to die. I just kind of thought, Lord, take me. You know, can you not just please take me? What is the point of my life? You know, and I really struggled with that, and that was every single day of my life for many, many years. And that's a pretty dark place to be, you know. And if you've ever suffered enough, or you've watched a loved one suffer, you know that there are things worse than death, you know. I think so anyway. So I no longer feel that way. My quality of life is, you know, it's not what I would like it to be. I'm still really limited. I'm still mostly homebound. I still have to very much watch what I do and mind my limitations. But I don't feel, I really don't have any pain to speak of anymore. I don't feel that sick, like hungover, flu-like feeling, because you feel like that every day too. I feel like that sounds so cliche, that's what we all say, but that's, I think, the closest thing we can think of to relate it to. You know, when you have a really bad flu, that feeling, that malaise that comes over you, everything hurts, you just feel sick, and there's just this feeling of like, ugh, I can't stand this. And that's what your day is like every single day when you have MECFS. And depending on whether you have a mild, moderate, severe, or very severe case, you know, your degree of misery kind of varies. So anyway, yeah, I don't really feel sick anymore. Even if I'm not having a great day now, it's nothing compared to what it used to be. I never really have that just sick, icky feeling. And like I said, I really don't have any pain anymore. And so those two things alone have greatly improved my quality of life. Even though I can't go out and do all the things I want to do still because of my energy limitations, I'm just not sitting here suffering. You know, I'm just not in a state of constant suffering and despair. So that's huge. Yeah, like I said, my symptom load has greatly decreased. And I think part of the reason for that is that the carnivore diet is an anti-inflammatory diet. And if you're scoffing at that, you know, I know it's counterintuitive to everything that we've been told. But the people who've done this diet and have seen the results, you know, the proof is in the pudding. So all of my, or most of my inflammation has calmed way down. As far as I'm concerned, the carnivore diet has been a huge water hose, you know, on a raging fire. So, and like I said, I think part of that is that carnivore tamps down the inflammation. Well, MECFS is an inflammatory disease. We have a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm sorry. Well, anyway, inflammation. We have a lot of cytokines, and the amount of symptoms you have is kind of related to the amount of cytokines that you have, you know, floating around or firing off. And when the inflammation load is reduced and the cytokine level goes down, obviously your symptom load is going to go down too. So, you know, that shows me that a lot of this illness and a lot of the symptoms that come from it are purely from inflammation alone. So, you know, part of beating this illness, or at least part of living with some degree of quality of life with this illness, is reducing inflammation. For me, the carnivore diet has done a really good job of that. I used to feel like my insides were vibrating constantly, and I've had some commenters comment about that and ask me about that. You know, it's hard to explain. You just feel like kind of like you have a cell phone on vibration, but everywhere in your body all the time. And that may not sound like it's that bad. It actually is. It's very distressing. And it keeps you from sleeping, keeps you from being able to rest. And when you're up and you're trying to stand upright or you're trying to move around, it just further increases that feeling of weakness. You know, like your legs just aren't that sturdy underneath your body. It's a really bizarre feeling. And another bizarre symptom that I lived with was something called brain zaps. And as I mentioned in a previous video, brain zaps, if you do a Google search on them, you know, they're primarily related to the withdrawal of like SSRI medications. Well, I haven't been on anything like that, so that wasn't it for me. So I just have to believe it was, you know, neuroinflammation, something that was making my brain perhaps even more excitable, whether it was something I was eating or You know, I don't know, just the illness doing its thing. There's a lot of mystery to this illness still. But since beginning Carnivore, I think like immediately those started reducing, and I still dealt with them, I think maybe for like the first 6 weeks, but since then I haven't had any. And those were one of the more miserable things that I dealt with, because it's like an electric shock in your brain that comes without warning. And usually for me, they came when I was trying to fall asleep. And so sleep is a tough thing. Most of us don't sleep, and if we do sleep, we're more like catnapping. We don't get into a REM sleep. We don't get restorative sleep. So we kind of get in a cycle where it's almost impossible to heal, you know, insult to injury. So I would feel myself, you know, finally starting to drift off to sleep, and then my brain would zap me back awake, and it would happen like that every time I was almost asleep, and it felt really cruel, you know. It was so absurd and mean. So it's just another ironic part of this illness, when you're so fatigued and all you want to do is rest, and your body just won't let you. It just will not let you rest. Voodoo doll. I'm kidding. But better mobility. So even though I'm still limited because of energy, my mobility is better. I don't feel like my legs are made of concrete anymore. I don't feel like it's so hard to move my body. I still have to be careful, and my muscles are still a little tight, you know, because I still have to spend a good bit of time resting. And me especially, I've lost a lot of muscle mass over these years. It's part of what happens when you can't be active. When your body punishes you for being active and it makes your condition worse, you really get stuck in a catch-22. You're kind of darned if you do and darned if you don't. That statement has never been more true to me than trying to live with MECFS. So, but when I walk around, you know, I feel like I have a more regular pace and gait. I used to feel like almost, shuffling isn't quite the right word, but it was like it was so hard to move my legs. It was like, I'd always tell my husband, it feels like my muscles don't want to work. It's like I had to really pull my legs around with me. They felt like they weren't like they weren't mine or something like that. Not really that, but just, I don't know, nothing. There was no flow. Like when you're trying to move your body, it's like you had to put extra effort into moving your legs and moving your arms. And when you're feeling healthy and normal, you know, that stuff just kind of flows. Not with MECFS. So, you know, that's greatly improved. All of my fibromyalgia symptoms are gone. If this is the first video of mine that you're watching, I have MECFS, fibromyalgia, chronic Lyme, and inflammatory bowel disease. My IBD diagnosis was early. They weren't sure if it was Crohn's or UC, which is ulcerative colitis, but I think we were leaning a little more towards ulcerative colitis. Those IBD symptoms are pretty much non-existent. I do have a little twinge of pain every once in a while, and that's usually when I try to introduce a food back into my diet that I haven't been eating. So it kind of tells me that I'm still pretty limited on what my body is gonna tolerate as far as eating. And that's just something I'll have to keep trying over and over again. Right now I'm just eating ribeyes and a few egg yolks, and I seem to do really well there. Like I said, my fibromyalgia symptoms are basically gone. I don't really have the tenderness and the pain that comes along with that. As far as the rest of the fibro symptoms go, it's hard to parse out. You know, there's so much overlap between MECFS, fibro, and chronic Lyme. It's hard to really parse out which is which. The reason I focus on MECFS the most is because it's what impacts me the most. And if you're wondering, well, how do you know that? The hallmark symptom for MECFS is post-exertional malaise, which I talked about earlier in the video. No other illnesses have that. Even the fatiguing illnesses like MS do not have post-exertional malaise. Now, I hear some talk about post-exertional malaise in the long COVID community, but I think long COVID is MECFS. That's just my opinion though, so you don't have to take that to the bank. Now, those are the improvements, and those are really major improvements. So let's talk about some of the hard lessons learned. Number one, progress is not always linear. Yeah, I'm learning that and relearning that and relearning that over and over again, and I have to kind of learn to manage my expectations. I don't always know as I improve. I don't know where my new limitations are, and then I end up kind of crashing into them, and then I have symptom flare-ups, and I end up in PEM, and then I really want to kind of beat myself up and have a pity party and kick myself when I'm down, and that isn't helpful. This is an experiment, and there's a huge learning curve, and I'm the only one doing it, you know, like I can't, and no one else in the carnivore community is really talking about MECFS, not that I have found at least, and so I can't learn from anyone else. It's just me kind of in the wilderness trying to figure this out. So yeah, it's complicated. But, you know, mindset is really important. If I'm gonna beat myself up every time I learn a hard lesson, it's not beneficial. You know, it's not helpful to be your own worst enemy in this illness. We already have a problem, you know, with our nervous system being sort of sympathetic dominant, and meaning that we stay more in that fight or flight zone. You know, we don't get enough of that parasympathetic state, which is your rest and digest state. That's where your body heals and restores. We're more tilted in the fight or flight, you know, phase, which explains a lot of things. It doesn't explain everything, but we can't heal in that state. And so if I get really upset and I'm just wanting to like beat myself up over every little mistake I make, when I don't know it's a mistake at the time, you know, I'm not doing anything to help myself, and I may actually just be making things worse. So trying to manage my mindset and stay positive is a big deal right now. Trying to stay hopeful and giving myself some space and some grace as I maneuver through all of this. Learning that pacing is probably one of the more important things. When I first started carnivore, I started getting all of this extra energy, and it was intoxicating because I hadn't had any energy, you know, for years, and I felt like a prisoner not only in my home but in my own body. So any little bit of energy I got, it felt like so much freedom. I would just burn it up because I thought, oh, I feel like I can do this thing and I'm going to do it. You know, it's like being starved. It's just like being starved, you know, and I really overdid it in a big way. And I've explained that in some previous videos, and I'm still paying for that a little bit. I don't feel as good at month 7 as I did at month 4, because I overdid it that badly, and I'm still trying to cover ground from that. But I haven't, like all those other symptoms that I was talking about earlier, they didn't come back. So that still tells me that my body is healing and that I'm moving in the right direction. I just have to prioritize pacing. And so what I've decided to do is do about half of what I think I can do, because it isn't clear. You know, my new energy envelope, it's not obvious to me. And so you don't know. Sometimes you don't know that you're overdoing it, you know, until the next day or the day after that. PEM can kick in 24 to 72 hours after an activity. So you might think you got away with it, and then a couple of days later you realize, no, I didn't get away with it. I'm paying for it. I'm in a crash. So learning to pace is really hard for me. I'm really paying attention to my heart rate, you know, trying to stay below my anaerobic threshold. I talked about that in my previous video, which is called Is Carnivore Enough? If you're curious about all of that, you can watch that video. So yeah, really being mindful of, you know, listening to my body and just paying attention to what I'm doing and trying to prioritize activities. So if I think, oh, I feel pretty good today, I can do these 4 things, I'm going to pick 2 and do those. And I'm just going to try that out for a while and see if that allows me to sort of charge my battery back up and stay within that energy envelope that keeps me from crashing. Another hard lesson learned is that healing takes time. I've been sick for a really long time, and I think when I first started Carnivore and I started seeing these improvements coming so quickly, part of me let myself actually think, well, maybe you're better now. Maybe you don't have to be so careful with your body. And I shouldn't have been that naive, but there were days I actually felt that good. I didn't just feel functional. I didn't feel just like I had the absence of sickness. I actually felt amazing. There were days where I actually felt amazing, which was such a foreign feeling to me. And I'm like desperate for that feeling again. So I'm really trying hard to get back to that. Since I overdid it so badly, I haven't had that I feel amazing feeling. I have had the, I feel pretty good today, you know, today's a decent day. I've been functional, certainly almost every day, but not to the same degree. So I'm trying to get back to that. That's why I'm trying so hard to pace. I still have limitations and needs, and that goes along with what I was just talking about with pacing, knowing your limits, knowing that you still have needs, knowing that I'm not invincible yet. I still have to ask for help and you know, still be cautious. So, you know, and that's okay. I guess the hardest thing to wrap my head around or to admit is that I still have MECFS. I want out of this situation so badly. There are no words. MECFS is a prison with a sadistic inmate, you know, roommate. It's awful, and I've had so much relief since starting Carnivore, but I'm not completely free. You know, it's like the door is open and maybe I'm on parole. I'm not stuck in prison all the time, but I'm not completely free from it. And in those earlier days, you know, like around month 4 when I was just feeling amazing, I think, you know, part of me just thought, maybe I don't have it anymore. I do, and that sucks, but I still believe that there's a way out, and I'm going to keep on going, and I'm going to figure it out come hell or high water. So I guess the last hard lesson learned is, you know, trust the process. That's not easy for me to do. I like to be in control of things. I like to know all of the information. I don't like question marks and mystery. You know, I can handle, even if it's the worst news in the world, I can handle information. I don't handle the unknown very well. And so all of this, there's a lot of unknowns, you know, and I don't particularly do well with that, but I am at a point where I can trust the process. I've had so much improvement, I've seen so much progress, that I know it's helping my body. And I've been sick, I've been homebound for 7 years, but I think I've had MECFS for 24 years. It just wasn't severe, you know. It went from mild, I think, to moderate to severe, and I think now I'm kind of back to moderate. And so I'm just learning to readjust my expectations, stay hopeful, keep my mind right, keep the fight up, you know. We can't lose hope. I've had some of you leave comments saying that you're really happy for me, but you haven't noticed any improvement doing carnivore. And so I don't really know what to say to that other than, you know, we're all individuals, and a lot of us came to this illness in a different way. I think that's why it's so tricky to understand it, even for the researchers to understand it. The etiology is not the same for everybody. For me, I had a very severe case of the Epstein-Barr virus, which cost me almost my entire senior year of having to be at home and mostly bedbound in that time. I did have times where I felt like I was getting better and I would try to go back to school, or at least try to, you know, do some activities, and I would just completely relapse and end up right back in bed. And so that was a really rough year, and I just kind of kept pushing my body. Imagine that. And so I think I kind of made things worse. And at the same time, I was going through something that left me with post-traumatic stress disorder. And so I was in a constant state of fight or flight and stress to the max. And when you're in that situation, your immune system basically shuts down. So having a virus that maybe I otherwise would have fought off in about a week and would have gone back to normal, it turned everything into a really big deal because my immune system was not functioning properly. So it was kind of a perfect storm of things that happened. You know, previous to that, I was never sick. I got strep throat about once a year, and that's it. You know, I was really healthy and robust and energetic, and I liked pushing, you know, trying to push my limits physically, and I'm just not, you know, I'm a shell of the person I once was. And I hope I'm never going to get back to how I felt at, you know, 16 or 17 years old. I don't expect that. So at 42, I don't really even know what normal probably feels like, you know, and that's kind of sad. But I do have hope that I'll get to a point where I can go on vacation again. Maybe I can go back to work one day. Maybe I can get on a paddleboard one day, get in a swimming pool. You know, like little things. So anyway, that's all for today. Stay the course. If this isn't working for you, maybe try to troubleshoot it a little bit. I've done this a few different ways, and I realized that I have some histamine intolerances. So if I were trying to do the carnivore diet with ground beef and bacon, and I'm lactose intolerant too, so if I was trying to do dairy, I would still be having a lot of histamine reactions and a lot of inflammation, and I probably wouldn't be able to tell any difference at all, honestly. And I had to kind of work through that, finding the food items that worked for me. I don't feel great when I eat chicken. In the beginning, I was trying to eat chicken thighs because I love them, and you know, they've got a decent amount of fat, but I didn't feel good after I ate them, so I cut those out. Maybe you need to tweak your diet a little bit. Maybe you're not getting enough fat. I've also, you know, I've tried different cuts of meat because honestly, I do the best on ribeyes, but they're not my favorite. I get tired of them. You know, they've never been my first choice of steak. So I went to New York strips for a while. I really enjoy those better. And I figured they've probably got a pretty good amount of fat, and they do, but not like a ribeye. I think 1 pound of a ribeye has like 98 grams of fat, and like 1 pound of New York strip has about 30 something grams of fat. So there's a really big difference. And when I switched from ribeyes to New York strips, I enjoyed my meals a little bit better, but my energy just took a dive, and I didn't feel good for weeks. And I thought, what is going on? And then I realized I wasn't getting enough fat. And I had kind of quit eating eggs at that time too. Not completely, but I had gone from eating like 6 to 10 or 6 to 12 egg yolks a day because I can't tolerate the whites. I went from eating 6 to 10 or 12 egg yolks a day and a ribeye to eating like 2 New York strips and maybe like 3 or 4 egg yolks. So I was getting a ton of protein, but I wasn't getting enough fat. And I didn't feel good. I didn't feel good doing it that way. Some people, yikes. Some people do better with more protein, and some people do better with more fat. I think for people, and this is just my opinion, it's not medical advice, but I think people in our situation who have a lot of healing to do, especially if you've been sick for a really long time and you have a lot of nervous system healing to do. Don't forget, MECFS is a disease of the central nervous system. I think the high fat is very healing to our nervous system. I think it also calms down the nervous system. I know on days where I really focus on fat, not just eating my meals, but you know, like eating a spoonful of beef tallow throughout the day. You know, I'll eat like three spoonfuls kind of just throughout the day. I feel better on those days. I'm calmer. My brain feels clearer, and my heart rate actually seems to do better too. And I don't know if there's an actual correlation to that, or an actual connection to that, but there seems to be a little bit of a correlation there. And I don't know if that too is maybe that it's, you know, calming down the nervous system, putting you more in a parasympathetic state, and maybe that helps the dysautonomia a little bit. I don't know. Again, learning curve, big experiment, and I'm the only one in it. So, yeah, maybe try eating more fat. I would say, I wouldn't give up. I would try it a few different ways before you gave up. Even if you decide to quit the carnivore diet, I would not ever go back to a standard American diet. At least focus on just eating whole foods, you know, one ingredient, real things, and really, you know, eliminate the sugar. You know, I don't do well on sugar at all. And I learned that pretty early on, and I'd cut that out even before I went carnivore. So I know we're told to eat a lot of fruit and it's good for you. I'm not convinced of that anymore. If you want to eat a handful of berries or something, that's on you. They tend to not have as much sugar, but yeah, it didn't matter for me if it was chocolate or blueberries or watermelon. It all affected me the same way. I felt very overstimulated. I felt very restless. And then all of my symptoms, pain, and especially like neuro symptoms and brain fog and things like that would really kick up. So sugar, bad for us. I think we need to avoid it as best we can. So if you want to go off of carnivore, I would do more of a ketovore kind of thing and try that. Anyway, we're all different. Our bodies are all different. We all react differently to different things. And so I can't say that this works for everybody. It has worked for a lot of people. It seems to be working for me. So before you decide to quit or decide that it just isn't working for you, maybe troubleshoot it just a little bit. All right. Appreciate you guys being here. I just hit 1,800 subscribers yesterday. That's kind of crazy to me. I'm glad that you guys are here and that you guys care what I have to say. And so yeah, I will, I'll end it there. Okay. Sorry, I'm in a weird headspace today. There's been a lot going on in the family and just a lot going on in the world, and it's all good, but I'm kind of in a funny headspace today. So anyway, thanks for being here, guys, and I'll talk to you soon.